Hey guys, welcome to the second video lecture. So in the last one, we introduced quadratics, and now we're actually going to start solving quadratics. So our first technique will just be factoring the quadratic and also using the diamond method to factor that quadratic. So you might remember that if you have a quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c, then it can always be factored into a product of linear terms. So that is equations that look like x plus r times x plus s. And x plus r and x plus s are what are known as linear factors. So we'll illustrate this method just by doing an example. So suppose we want to solve x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. And we want to factor it. So the first thing is we're going to say that we can factor it because we know that there is a factorization. And so that factorization is going to look like x plus r times x plus s. And now we're going to ask ourselves, what happens when we multiply out these linear terms? And hopefully it'll give us some information on what r and s have to be. So when we multiply it out, we get x squared plus sx plus rx plus r times s. And that was just by foiling. And then we group like terms, and that gives us x squared plus x plus r times x plus rs. And now we see that since both this quadratic and this quadratic have to be equal, it must be the case that s plus r equals 5 and s times r equals 6. And now we just have to find numbers that make that work. Sometimes this is really quick, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Now, a methodical way to do this would be to try and solve for r in terms of s, and then plug that in for r in the other equation, and then try to solve for s. And hopefully get an answer that way. That actually just gives us back the same quadratic, which isn't a mistake because these numbers are coming from the quadratic. So that's a case where sometimes the diamond method fails. But if we can easily see numbers that satisfy this, then we're good. And so just by looking at finding two numbers that sum to 5 and multiply to 6, we know that s will equal 3 and r will equal 2. And of course, that could go the other way as well. R could be 3 and s could be 2. So that's our r and our s. And that means that we can now factor our quadratics. We write x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals x plus 3, x plus 2. And that whole thing equals 0. And then we just look for the values that make one of these terms 0. And if this one is equal to 0, then x equals -3. And if this one equals 0, then x equals -2. Thus, our solutions are x equals -2, comma, -3. And the reason they call this the diamond method of factoring is often in middle school or high school when you're doing algebra, you'll write it in a way that looks like this, where you have r and s, you put r plus s on the top, and r times s on the bottom. So in our case, we would have written it as 5 on the top, 6 on the bottom, an R and an S. And it looks like a diamond, therefore we call it the diamond method. But often in this class, I will never draw this diamond. We'll just ask for two numbers that sum to the middle term and multiply to the ending coefficient. All right, so that's the diamond method. I went over it quickly because I think it should be reviewed for almost everyone. All right, thanks for watching this video. See you on the next one.